Hey everybody, welcome back. This is our 2012 Ram 1500 Bighorn. Today we're going to be doing helper bags on the rear end. If you saw the previous video of the helper bags going in the Durango, it's pretty much the same way. The kit for this one's a little bit different, but this is what we're going to be doing. All right, so here's our kit for the 2012 Ram. It is quite a bit different than the Durango, and for our 5th gen, as you'll notice, the bag sizes on these are quite different than the Durango. They were kind of shorter and more in diameter. This is our part number for the 2012 Ram. As you can see right there. So, this is our kit for it. All right, so again, we chalk both tires. We're gonna do just like the Durango. We'll lift it up, put some jack stands underneath the frame to support it, and use our floor jack to leverage what height we want the rear end at as we are swinging it out to get the coil springs out. All right, so as you can see, we got the back end lifted off the ground. Quite a decent amount, enough to swing the rear end out. So it is basically fully dropped down, and then we have the floor jack just to give a little support so it's not completely hanging. You will need a little tension on the rear end as far as weight supporting it. That way you can get the bolts out quite a bit easier when we take the shocks out. For this one, we'll just be disconnecting the bottom bolts on the shocks, swinging them out where it meets the axle. We will take our 2 bolts out on either side for the sway bar, and then we will disconnect our support rod here. And that'll do it. All right, so again, much like the Durango, our 2 bolts for the sway bar were 15 millimeter, and our shock bolts were 21 millimeter for the bolt and the nut. And this bolt is a 21 millimeter as well. So that's all the tools we'll really need for dropping this rear end down. So we just have to drop this bar bolt, and that's it. We'll be able to swing the rear end out of this. All right, so we actually ended up taking the bolt out of the other side of this bar because, as you can see, we have a dual exhaust model, so our exhaust is right there by that bolt. So for clearance reasons, we just took the other one out. And now we can slowly release the jack and drop the rear end down. But also, don't forget to mark the orientation of your coil springs. That way you know where they sit back when you put them back in. As you can see, it's coming down slowly. All right, so also I am doing these 1 coil spring at a time. That way I don't get the 2 sides mixed up, because you never know if one's a little different than the other and could make the truck sit, you know, sideways a little bit, offset. So with these, what we do is we pull the little cap off the top. This one slides down through the top. You put the little hose on there with the clip, and that'll do it. All right, also, I don't know if you can see it very well, but I'm going ahead and running the hose up through the spring mount pocket up there. That way we aren't fighting with the hose after the spring is already in there blocking the way. So you put the hose through first and kind of pull the hose through as you're putting the coil spring back in place. That way you know it's not getting caught anywhere or pinched, because that will affect your air getting to it. To show y'all why I remove the coil springs when I do this instead of trying to shove them through the side of the coils, imagine this. So this airbag here is a little bit more robust, kind of a heavier duty one. As you can see, I'm pushing it with my hand and it's kind of a tight fit in there. There is no way you would be able to get this through those spring coils because it actually takes a little bit of tension to push this thing down inside the coil spring. And I just don't see that happening with it in the truck. All right, so with a little bit of tension, pushing it down inside the spring, and then we put our little plastic puck on top so it doesn't crush this air fitting up here. And then we attach our hose with our little clamp on there, and it's ready to go back in. All right, so we put all the bolts back in, tightened everything back up, dropped the truck back down, and we're done. So again, it took about an hour and a half or so from start to finish. We used a 15 millimeter for our sway bar bolts there. We used a 21 millimeter for our shocks and our crossbar. We used a pair of pliers for the little clips on the end of our air hoses. And we used a pair of electrical pliers to cut our air hose. So that's really it. We just ran our air line along the frame there and tucked it around back and dropped it back down here. So that's all it really takes. It's a pretty quick process. You just have to be careful and make sure to support that rear end so it doesn't fall down on you. And that's really about it. All right, so that's all for today's video. We got the rear helper bags installed and we're done with that step of it.